I am privileged to hold the Colonel Hallett Distinguished University Chair in Military History. And I got three great loves in life. One is my discipline, history. It's pretty cool that they pay me money to turn my avocation, hobby, into vocation, profession. My third love is the grand old game of baseball. If I have a religion, it's a church of baseball. Now, my three loves, the oldest is baseball, and the most passionate is baseball. Last semester, head of the department, Professor Sprayberry, asked me to mount a class in the history of baseball. So I had the opportunity of melding two of my great loves. But I was reluctant because Madam Hallett didn't spend $2.5 million to endow my chair in military history to teach a class in baseball history. So I figured some blowback, and believe me, I got some. But it was worth it. Last year, I went up to the archives, and we're at the largesse of the Dean of Libraries, and he, as his primary mission, is to build up the archives of the university. It already is a first rate, and it's going to get better. And one thing that's going to make it better is that I rocked in one day, walking back to my duty station, looked over in the corner, and I saw this mountain of cardboard boxes. And it said, baseball. Forget about the job, forget about the research. I scurried over there. And what before my wondrous eyes did appear? But Cecil Darby, a longtime sports writer, has given the archive his own archive of professional baseball in Columbus since the 1880s. So now, having embarked on this class, I tell my intrepid students, three of them, two of them are here, that there's a gold mine of possible research topics. So we're up there. And one of them says, hey, Billy. Now, Billy's my baseball persona. After Billy Martin. Both of us were exceptionally good in all of our jobs and got fired in every one of them. And both of us had bad nose jobs. I said, Billy, I found these folders in the mid-1960s. Did you know that there was a team called the Columbus Confederate Yankees? My mind was spinning. Now, being a military historian, I'm saying 1964, 5, 6. Well, throw that back. 1864. Not a good year for the Georgia or the South, right? The Atlanta campaign, the March to the Sea. 65 wasn't a good year for Columbus or the South. Battle of Columbus, the sacking of Columbus. 66, arguably worse, Reconstruction. Then, move forward, 1964, 65, 66. What do we have then? Well, the long delayed for exactly a century, the promises of the Civil War and Reconstruction were finally being delivered. And that, too, was not good news for the majority of white Southerners. Yet, nonetheless, there's a team in Columbus, Georgia, called the Confederate Yankees. Now, before I came to Columbus, I came from Singapore. I was aware of baseball in Columbus. I read the biography of Curt Flood. I read the biography of Bob Gibson. I read David Hellersham's book about 1964. Recounted that baseball season. Three teams were tied for the National League pennant on the last day of the season, one being the Cincinnati Reds, but they didn't win. The Cardinals did, played the Yankees. It was the last of the great Yankee teams. The Cardinal team was integrated. Lou Brock, Hall of Fame, left field. Curt Flood sacrificed his career in order to challenge what he called chattel slavery, the reserve clause. Bill White, first baseman, later president of the National League. and the great pitcher of his era, Bob Gibson. Gibson and Flood both had played in the Sally League, and they said that, without a doubt, the most racist town, the most intolerant town they played in was Columbus, Georgia. So, with the History Department's major focus on gender and race, I said to myself, this is the perfect time. Now, whether it turned out that way or not is to be seen. So, as a history professor, you want to bring your best qualified student to bear on the project. As an old baseball manager, you want to bring in a closer. In this case, it was the same person. And even better, the closer actually is a closer. For 2 years, he was a closer of the Cougars. Throws in the low 90s, touched the high 90s. Should have been drafted. Didn't happen. So I hand the ball off as a good manager to my closer. You're on.
Well, it was a really fine introduction. I appreciate it. I have a few people I'd like to thank before we get started. First, thank you to the Department of History and Geography at CSU for making this event possible. Dr. Gary Sprayberry and Dr. Crosswell have mentored me throughout this project, and Ms. Patty Chappelle has been more than patient with me in the department office. I'd also like to thank the Student Research and Creative Endeavors Committee. The research grant they approved for me largely aided in the project. Also, thank you to the CSU libraries and the archives, the clerk of council's office downtown, and all the other contributors to the project. I'd like to give a special thanks to Rickey Steele and Richard Hyatt, who have been instrumental in organizing the panel for the event. Finally, thank you to my family for supporting the project from day one. Now, before I get started on the slide part of the presentation, I feel like it's important to talk about it and talk about the entire thing in a broader sense, to be able to give you some context so that when we go back through, you can kind of piece in the stuff on the slides as to what my research actually showed. When I first began this research project, I was convinced that the focus of the project was going to be race. The team was called the Confederate Yankees. There were Confederate flag patches on the jerseys. Black players wore them as well. Certainly in the South, at the height of the Civil Rights Movement, there was going to be conflict. In 1964, the Civil Rights Act was passed. The team began play that year. Surely resistance to the team would come from the black community. My research revealed that it was something entirely different. The use of the flag and the Confederate phrasing with the team were driven by a very distinctive set of factors. Columbus had been without a baseball team for 5 years. Having a minor league baseball team was an expression of civic pride. City officials had relentlessly pursued the franchise and failed more than once. When a franchise was finally secured, the next step would be to make sure that they were able to keep it. Unfortunately, the franchise had been extended through a working agreement with the New York Yankees. All of the Yankees minor league clubs had to have the Yankee name and moniker. People in town would not take well to that. Yankees, both the team and the Yankees in the larger sense, were not well received in the South. If the team was to operate feasibly, the ownership had to make the team likable to the people in the community. Beginning in 1961, there were Civil War centennial celebrations in the South. These also took place in Columbus. The city largely supported them. This was demonstrated through massive support for a musical production of the Battle of Columbus, which was the last battle of the Civil War. Confederate iconography and terminology were used in all aspects of advertising and publications. A large contingent of the community felt a rebirth of Southern heritage and renewed regional identity during the time period. Immediately after getting the franchise, the team saw resistance from the religious community regarding alcohol sales at Golden Park. Eventually, beer sales were approved, and a significant portion of Columbus was then morally opposed to what was happening at the ballpark. The team had to find a way to regain lost fans despite them not ever playing a game yet. The club took advantage of the local cultural atmosphere and used the flag and the Confederate moniker. See, sports require fan bases to bond with the teams. That's a key part of it. There was little hope that the target audience of the baseball team would connect with the Yankees, especially after the dispute over the beer sales. The oxymoronic term Confederate Yankees was the solution for this. The ownership walked a fine line when they utilized the name of the flag. During the previous 5 years, the city had touted itself as progressive in terms of race and baseball. They had sought to join the Southern Association in the place of teams that were withdrawing for the sole reason that they were unwilling to play teams that had black players.